This morning, we have such a wonderful opportunity, such a wonderful guest and leader here in the state of Illinois and the region, the country, frankly, with us this morning. And that is President of the Cook County Board of Commissioners, Toni Preckwinkle. Good morning, Ms. Preckwinkle. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Good morning, Richard. Thank you.
Always good to hear your voice. I'm going to get right to something that I want to thank you for right out of the gate. And during COVID, I made this comment on another show that I'm part of, the Family Meeting, that because of the fact that we had great local leadership between our mayor, you as a Cook County president, and our governor, we as a state and a region were able to lead and go forward and do a great job of taking care of the citizens. And I want to tip my hat to you for that, because you were a great part of the coordination of all the effort and the benefits and the support that the area benefited from. So that's my first tip of the hat to you this morning. The second one is how great you and the mayor and the governor were able to, along with the other county commissioners, to put together a great Democratic National Convention. It was the talk of the town. It was the talk of the world, frankly. So I really appreciate that. And thirdly, just in general, your leadership in the area. And I'm just proud to have you on the show this morning. But I wanted to tip my hat to you first to say that to you directly about the things that you've been right at the tip of the spear to make sure gets done here in Chicago, the Cook County, the county, and of course the state. So thank you, Ms. Preckwinkle.
Well, listen, I'm very grateful for your kind words. Let me begin by talking about those things. First of all, the pandemic. I want to acknowledge the help and support that we got from Governor Pritzker. You may know that we ran half a dozen mass vaccination sites, our health and hospital system, in conjunction with our real estate folks in the Bureau of Asset Management, put together sites at what were vacant big box stores.
Yep.
And we couldn't have done that with our own resources. We got help from the governor and the National Guard and supplementary health staff that the state paid for as well. So we were able to, I think, the health and hospital system got 1 million vaccines in people's arms, and our local partners at federally qualified health centers did another 1 million. So we were responsible for about 2 million vaccines in people's arms, and that made a big difference in terms of the outcomes for people who were exposed to the disease or got the disease.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful. I have to acknowledge, you talked about it as a partnership. I agree, it was a partnership, but we were really relying on the state support that we got and couldn't have done it without it. So that's one thing. The convention. I just want to congratulate Christy George. She was our local person in charge of the convention. I think she did a great job. As you may know, she's a young African-American woman, and it's flawless, I guess. We had perfect weather. The convention ran smoothly.
Didn't we have great weather?
Yeah, I mean, the city showed well, and frankly, I've been to a number of conventions. This was my favorite, not just because it was hometown, but because it was in the city, which is so beautiful. Because of the speeches, I mean, it just if you think of Michelle Obama's address and Oprah, and I'm talking about the women, of course, and of course our candidate, who really showed herself to be a reasonable, responsible leader, and I thought she was a great candidate. And I know there's a lot of kind of back and forth now about what happened in this election, but given the time that she had to introduce herself to the American people and to persuade them that she could be an effective leader, I think she did a great job.
She did. And to that point, even with the time, by contrast, we had contrast of something other than that for a long time for people to be able to make a more rational and intelligent decision. Vice President Harris did need 307 days. She needed 1 day to show the country that versus me is they're miles apart. So, kudos though, again, to what you just said about how the leadership and the partnership came together. Do our listeners a tiny favor. A lot of folks, they see your name, they hear your name, they know who this person is, but just take a moment and just give your own quick history lesson, because I want people to know kind of your background and what you've done to get to where you are and then sustain yourself in that role. We got some issues to talk about, but I really want people to know a little bit about your history and your background.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. You know, I'm a history teacher. I spent the first 10 years of my working life teaching high school history, and I loved it. I knocked around a little bit at various not-for-profits. I worked for the city of Chicago. I was head of the Chicago Jobs Council, executive director of the Chicago Jobs Council, which is an organization that focuses on employment issues and supporting those that provide employment training services, advocating for them. And then in 1991, I was elected on my third try as alderman of the 4th Ward, where I served for almost 20 years. And I was elected to this office in November of 2010. So I've been in public life for more than 30 years, and it's been a privilege and an honor.
When I hear people say, you know, folks that have been involved in politics for a long time, what that actually the upside of that is someone that has your sort of background. I mean, you fought through. Third time's a charm. You kept fighting, and showing that your history was a benefit rather than not to your ability to get to where you are now and be such an impactful leader to the second largest county in America. People don't know that. I do, but I talk about it a lot. And so you're responsible for a lot of stuff and a lot of people, a lot of resources. And I want to get your take, obviously, on the elephant in the room in terms of these executive orders and what the county's response is and how you're trying to create that firewall of protection for citizens of the county.
Well, this has been a pretty chaotic couple of weeks. I think we'd all agree. You know, President Trump has issued a number of executive orders and directives that, of course, have created that chaos. You know, I think the most telling in terms of how he's going to proceed and the confusion and chaos that he's going to create is the memo that temporarily halted payment on all federal assistance programs. And although it's been rescinded, it would have stopped programs that provided food assistance, access to health care, affordable housing. It's hard to know who suggested that this might be a good idea, but it surely caused a lot of consternation and anxiety and fear among, you know, our seniors and our families. It's incomprehensible to me, but I think it's indicative of what we're going to see in the future. These not very well thought out at best executive orders and directives, and then either withdrawal of them or good folks will file suits to try to prevent them from being implemented. So we're in for a pretty bumpy ride here, in my opinion.
So you, the governor, Mayor Brandon Johnson, all the folks that are you three are the top three leaders, and I would add to that list Attorney General Kwame Raoul in terms of sort of the 4, 5, 6 top voices when it comes to making sure that our city, our county, our state is going to be able to have a less bumpy ride. I have to believe that you guys are working in coordination and in partnership to share resources and share information about how do we navigate that, as well as, you know, the immigration items that are coming our way.
Yeah. The chiefs of staff have been meeting to be sure that our efforts are coordinated. And, you know, in our case, we run a health system, and we want to be sure that people who come to our health system do not fear for their safety. So the health and hospital system has implemented a number of protocols to ensure that should representatives of Immigration and Customs Enforcement come to our healthcare facilities or our hospitals, they are not allowed to snatch people up. You should understand that presently the President Trump has said that, in contrast to previous practice, that our ICE people can go to hospitals, to schools, to religious institutions, and extract people. So we're doing our best. What I said to my staff was, we have to think of ourselves as part of the resistance, and in every arena for which we're responsible, how can we protect the people that we serve?
That's fantastic to hear. I've always believed that we aren't going to agree. We're on the same team. We aren't going to agree on everything. Neither should we, because there's no growth if we only just agree on everything. But in this case, you guys are doing what I believe is a wonderful job of letting the city, the county, the state, the region, and frankly, the country know that Illinois will not be taken for granted. The bus will not be run over us. And it's great to hear that you and your staff are looking at it that way. I want to ask you a question about something that the White House press secretary said or intimated with regard to the reasons why the federal assistance pause was taking place. And I commented on this in an earlier segment, that it was because of the quote-unquote, and I'm paraphrasing, Ms. Preckwinkle, the fat that the Biden administration had in it. So to the extent that you know anything about that, I know it's not factual, but what are your observations in terms of the White House's response and then reneging or backing away, but blaming it on there being fat in the budget?
Well, I think whether we're talking about our household budget or the federal government's budget, there are probably opportunities to trim. But you don't do that with an axe. You do that with a scalpel. And you don't do it without any thought or preparation or consideration of possible consequences. So even if you believed that there was fat in the federal government, the idea that you can determine where that is and excise it in the course of a week and a half, in my view, is nonsense. And if you, your idea that you've got billions of dollars in federal expenditure, and the way in which to determine that which is fat is to just stop everything until you figure it out. No, I think that if you have good sense, you look carefully at the programs and services that you're delivering over time, and then figure out maybe what things are absolutely critical and what things we may have to no longer provide. But the idea that you can make those difficult determinations given the size of the federal government in 10 days boggles the mind.
So there's a thing that I made a note of when I'm listening to you this morning. I sense a certain amount of exasperation in your voice on a lot of these subjects, but I also hear the encouragement and the forward thinking that you've always brought to the table when it comes to solving problems. How are you articulating through that with your staff and other people that you have meetings with and encounters with right now?
One of the things we did before the president was inaugurated was ask our policy team to talk to all of our folks and try to anticipate some of the kinds of things that President Trump might do, and then what both our vulnerabilities are and what our response might be. So we prepared a document that outlined what our challenges were going to be, so that we frankly wouldn't be caught flat-footed when these initiatives maybe were announced or there was an effort to implement them. So that's the first thing: trying to be prepared by anticipating possible actions by the federal government, and then looking at that document and trying to figure out where our greatest vulnerabilities are. So we did work prior to the president's inauguration on the 20th to try to determine what the landscape was going to be after January 20th, and I'm very grateful to our policy team for that. And then, of course, we knew there were going to be difficulties around immigration, and we're part of the effort to try to provide as much information as we can to our immigrant communities I want to congratulate the Illinois Council on Immigrant and Refugee Rights, ICER, which is doing a great job. It's a coalition of organizations that's doing a great job to get information out into our neighborhoods, to communities and to residents so that they know their rights should someone from ICE come to their door or their place of work. And frankly, we can't prevent the federal government from making these raids, but we can provide people with information so that they know what their rights are should they encounter ICE officials.
Developing policy, having conversations, and knowing what's coming, and then being able to have the proverbial umbrella ready with tools that support the people that need them. You are very strongly committed to environmental justice. Talk a little bit about that as it relates to the work that you're doing here in Cook County.
Before I do that, Richard, let me just, there's one thing I forgot to mention, and I should take a moment to share this. With the support of our commissioners, I'm particularly grateful to Commissioners Anaya, Commissioner Quesada, Commissioner Aguilar. We have a unit within the Public Defender's Office that represents immigrants facing deportation. So not only are we working with advocates and community organizations around the county to get the word out about Know Your Rights, we're also doing our best to protect people who come into the criminal justice system as a result of their documentation status. So I want to thank the Public Defender's Office for that good work and acknowledge the support of our commissioners broadly and those three commissioners in particular for their support of that program. Environmental justice. The environmental movement has not always focused on justice. That is, the communities that have been disproportionately impacted by not just climate change, but, the location, for example, of waste facilities, or how close communities are to things like oil refracting facilities and so on, right? And the communities that are often closest to those, whether it's a landfill or a fracking plant for oil, are often low-income communities of color. So when we look at environmental issues, we also have to think of environmental justice. And while it's about clean air and safe drinking water and green spaces, it's also about trying to hold polluters accountable and invest in communities that historically have been marginalized. So it's and I think the environmental movement is, although it initially started out as a movement of pretty privileged white people, frankly, concerned about climate change and preserving the beauty of our great country, ordinary folks in communities of color have also taken up the environmental issue and focused on the justice aspect of environmental policy. So, I want to thank all the grassroots community folks who have done this work and put environmental justice on the table in our discussions about the environment. And I want to encourage people to attend. We've got a town hall meeting coming up on this coming Monday, February 3rd, from 6 to 7:30 p.m. at Malcolm X College, which is 1900 West Jackson Boulevard. And it's a chance to hear more about the environmental justice policy that we're developing and to share your thoughts and insights. So
will you be there? Not to put your business in the street, okay? Because I might try to make my way over there to that. That's a great event to be a part of. As we wrap up, a couple of final questions, and there's so much to talk about. I feel like I'm sitting in your history class, and just taking notes because I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much information. In the last 7-8 years, Chicago's been deemed by Condé Nast Magazine as one of the coolest places to be, safe, clean, all that. But we have to remember, that we have this great forest preserve system, which you are essentially, in charge of, and you and your other commissioners, to making our forest preserves wonderful. Talk about that a little bit as we kind of come to a close today.
Sure. Well, first of all, the Forest Preserve District is a separate governmental body, but it has the same officers and commissioners as the county itself. It's about $180 million a year in its budget. And it's responsible for almost 70,000 acres in Cook County, which is about 11% of our land area. So we are really blessed to have this natural resource within our bounds. And it's river systems, it's lakes, it's trails, we have campgrounds. We have 5 campgrounds around the county where you can tent, you can connect your RV, you can share a cabin with family and friends. We have nature centers. It is a blessing to all of us, and I just want to encourage people to get out, not just in the summer when the temperature is a little more amenable than the moment, but also in the winter. I mean, I go out for winter walks in the forest preserves. It's absolutely beautiful. And in the winter, there's a chance, if there is snow, for cross-country skiing and snowshoeing and sledding. But you can always go for a walk or ride your bike. If you're into cycling, or actually we allow horses in our forest preserves as well. So there are lots of opportunities to do fun stuff outdoors in our forest preserves during the winter, and I hope folks will take advantage. We have forest preserves all across the county.
Well, I so appreciate you being with us. I'm trying to just let folks know that we have such great leadership in our area, whether it be Mayor Johnson and his team, and you and your team, the governor and his team, and the lieutenant governor. And we have a lot to be proud of for having folks like you, Ms. Preckwinkle, as one of the leaders in the area and one of the folks that help keep us moving forward. I greatly appreciate you being with us this morning, and I hope that maybe we can check in with each other once a quarter to have you come on and talk about what's happening in the area and the county, because what you do is so integral to the region. And I know people don't say that to you enough. I will say it. I'm one of your supporters. I believe in the work that you've done. And, you used to be a history teacher. How could you not like a history teacher, Henry?
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I am grateful for the encouragement that you've given me this morning.
Absolutely. Thank you for being with us, Ms. Preckwinkle. Maybe I'll see you on Monday at Malcolm X, but have a great rest of the week. Stay safe, and we appreciate all that you do.